Hi Stuart, how you doing?
Hi Ben, you okay?
Yeah, all good. So we're starting episode one of this new podcast, which we're calling Politics, Renewable Heating and Gas. And the reason why we're doing that is because people often ask me, what do I do for business? And then I say plumbing, heating and gas, PHG. So politics, heating and gas, and renewables, obviously. Because we're going to discuss politics as it pertains to our industry of heating and gas and renewables and all that sort of stuff. So I'm Ben from B Express Plumbing and Heating. I'm based in Northwest London, and my company, as I said, is B Express Plumbing and Heating. Who are you?
And I'm Stuart from Manchester. My company is H&H Gas Services. So Ben, you mentioned when we were talking earlier that you went to the installer show last week. What can you tell our viewers about that?
Yeah, so Installer was really interesting. I went on day one of a 3-day exhibition on all things plumbing and heating. And it's very, very interesting because last year when I went, there was this big, every boiler manufacturer that was there was talking about hydrogen boilers. But just last week, there was an announcement by, I think, Greg Hands, who's the Minister of Energy, or some such, and he came along and said that they're no longer considering hydrogen as a fuel to run to people's homes, which I think is a fantastic idea. There were so many problems with hydrogen. And this year, not a single boiler manufacturer was there talking about hydrogen. They were all talking about heat pumps, which is fantastic because I believe heat pumps are the future, even though they can't be everywhere in every home, but they can be in most homes in the UK.
So what would you say would be suited then for the older housing stock, say the sort of 1910, 1920 build without cavity wall installation and modern doors and windows, maybe very drafty, lots of heat loss. If the government want to ban gas by a specific time and heat pumps won't work in these properties, what do you think would be a solution instead?
Yeah, it's a great question. And really, I think that a form of heat pumps will always be the answer. Whether that's a heat pump that uses the pipes inside a person's house and heats up your radiators, or whether you use a heat pump as an air conditioning unit, that might be the option that we would have in their house. Now, the fact that we've got older properties doesn't take away that heat pumps work. They can still heat up a house with, they can still heat up a house which has giant gaping holes in the wall. It's not ideal and it will cost the customer a lot more money to run. But ideally, we would put some sort of maybe inside the house insulation, which would take away from the size of the room, but would still insulate the property. They could put secondary glazing, as I've seen in the Hampstead houses, which is an area where you need they've got really strict planning regulations and they won't allow double glazing in that area if the house didn't originally have it. So I think you can still do it. Now, there's obviously all other options like electric boilers, which I did see at Installer. And I'm not really that keen on electric boilers because, sorry, I'm not so keen on.
Ben, would you mind just explaining to our viewers what a heat pump is and in comparison to maybe a combi boiler?
Okay, so a combi boiler is what most people will probably have in the house, or a version of a combi boiler. Gas comes to the boiler, and then there are a minimum of 2 or 3 pipes coming off that boiler. That would be a system boiler or heat-only boiler. A combi boiler would have 5 or 6 pipes. I say 5 or 6 because 5 pipes are actually used to heat your hot water and your heating, but the 6th pipe would normally be the condensed pipe because we nowadays have condensing boilers. A combi boiler would give you both heating and hot water all in one product. A heat only or system boiler would give you hot water, which would be then switched by diverter valves to either heating or hot water to your hot water cylinder. A heat pump works in a similar sort of way. It's a central point. It's a unit which is stuck outside in the garden, and it has a big, large fan, and it sucks air through a refrigerant which is held in pipework. So I'm getting quite technical here. And even in very cold temperatures, that cold air still has warmth inside it, which the refrigerant catches. It then gets compressed, and by compressing, it raises the temperature. and that raised temperature goes up into the house. Now, it's a renewable technology, because for every 1 kilowatt of electricity that goes into it, there's 3, 4, or 5 kilowatts of power, of heat power, that goes into your house. So it's classed as a renewable technology. And obviously, as it runs on electricity, if renewable electricity is coming through the grid, then it is fully renewable. And
Speaking
then,
of renewable electricity, Ben, I'd just like to get your thoughts on solar panels. I mean, there is some new technology out there, like the Tesla roof. I don't know if you've heard about that, where every single roof tile is actually a solar panel, rather compared to the old-fashioned where they just stick a block of solar panels on your roof, which some people may say quite ugly. How do you think that could work in conjunction with heat pumps?
I think they're great, because if you have any type of solar system and that produce electricity, so normally solar PV, which is what Tesla solar panels are, just smaller and more compact and in a way better, they go into a battery, and from that battery you can then draw off all the power to the house, which will run also your heat pump, or it can feed into the grid, and you can sell energy into the grid that you've got for free. But on the other hand, you would need a very large battery normally to power your house. So you're normally always drawing off the grid at the same time at a higher cost than you getting free energy from the sun. I say free energy from the sun, not counting the several £1,000s that you have to spend in order to have the solar panels put on the wall and the battery as well. So that can be quite costly. But then after that, it's all free. I do think
there's also wind turbines that are being made for domestic use nowadays. I've started to see quite a few of those in more rural areas, such as farms and things like that. But
yeah,
obviously, they're not as great as solar yet.
I don't think that they're really meant for a house in London or in Manchester, or even a house out in the countryside. I think they're meant for farms which can give over large amounts of space to these types of projects. I don't see a wind farm or wind turbines going up above my neighbours' houses. I do see solar panels, and I do see air source heat pumps being installed. So I don't think that that is something that the standard person in the UK would have in their house.
So, from your point of view, you think hydrogen is gone, and air source heat pumps will be the future?
Yeah, and maybe electric boilers in places where it's absolutely impossible to put a heat pump, or maybe in a flat where it's more difficult to put in a heat pump. But even there are solutions. Everything costs, and heat pumps in flats cost more. But there are ways of getting heat pumps into every house.
Do you think the government should be doing more to upgrade the UK housing stock in regards to insulation and things like that?
I think that the government's not thinking properly, nor are Labour thinking properly about how we get around these things. There's such a wide aspect of things that need to happen before we can start installing heat pumps in bulk. Boris, when he was PM, he's announced 600,000 heat pumps will be installed every year from, I think, 2027, I think it was. It's an impossibility at the moment. There's only 1,500 companies out there that are registered with MCS, which is the government organization that runs all the different micro, can't remember what MCS stands for, whatever. It's all about all the different renewables that we have going on, whether it's solar panels or whether it's air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps and anything else that might be there. And there's only 1,500 of those companies. And if you're an MCS registered company, then you can offer your customers £5,000 grant to have some technologies put in. But that's not enough. If a normal job costs around £20,000, a £5,000 grant doesn't give you enough money to spend to spec up your house. And that's just to put in the air source heat pump, but then you still need to put in maybe better double glazed windows. You might need to put in insulation, like you've said before, and that doesn't cover those products. So how does the installer become MCS registered? They need to have gone on a load of courses and taken time away from their business and spent a lot of money on those courses. And then they can go and install their first heat pump. But most people don't want Ben to install a heat pump when he's never done a heat pump outside of other third-party companies. if I'm doing my own first heat pump for you, the customer, why would you trust me to install that heat pump? I've installed many boilers, but I've never installed a heat pump where I've done my own calculations and my own spec. So it's very difficult to get onto the MCS. And then the other thing is that at the moment, if I was to say, yes, I can install your heat pump, I can't guarantee you'd get that £5,000 grant because I'm not MCS registered yet. I only get registered after my first installation and it's been checked out. So
Ben,
that's just on the installer.
Ben, I know you're very into heat pumps at the moment. What sort of manufacturer warranty are offered with heat pumps? For example, certain boiler manufacturers, such as Valent or Intergas, if you're one of their registered or accredited installers, will offer you up to 12 years, hassle-free, as long as the boiler is serviced every year and the service booklet is filled in. What sort of thing is there out there? What sort of thing is there out there like for heat pumps?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because when I was wandering around installer, I didn't see any spectacular warranties given by heat pump companies. Valent, which offer, like you said, 10 or 12-year warranty on their boilers, on certain ones of their boilers, only offer a maximum 7-year warranty on their heat pumps. Nibi, however you pronounce that, they only offer, for me, if I was registered with them, they would offer me, I've got to get this right, I think it's a 2-year warranty out of the box, 5-year if I've been registered with them, and 7-year if I'm one of their accredited installers. So the max seems to be 7-year, and no one seems to be wanting to go any higher, which is slightly annoying.
And what sort of incentive is there for a customer to pay so much money for a heat pump, which is a relatively new and I could say almost untested technology compared to the boiler-to-boiler swap, which boilers have been around for many, many years now. I'd say almost over 100 years, since 1920s or so, and they're a tried and tested technology. And compared to a heat pump install, is relatively cheap. Say combi to combi swap in the region of £2,000 to £3,000 compared to spending £20,000. And you say there's a government incentive of £5,000, but that still leaves £15,000 short.
Yes,
what incentive do I have to install one?
You're right, and I'm just checking on Google when the first heat pump was installed. The first heat pump, it says here, was installed in 1856 in Austria. So heat pumps have been around for a while. The first boiler that's been installed, first boiler installation, according to Google, first.
I mean, I'm talking more about domestic sort of household boiler installations. I'd imagine it was around the 20s or the 30s.
I can't see. Yeah. And I know, I think, was it in the 60s or 70s, Worcester Bosch created the first combi? I think.
Was it really that far back out?
Worcester Bosch.
I mean, there's all the old Baxi Bermudas and, back boilers and things from the 60s and 70s. But yeah, I think it was before that.
Yeah, the combi boiler was, I think, in the 60s or 70s. That was when the first Worcester Bosch combi boiler ever came out, and they were the first.
Apparently. Either way, it's a cheaper and more efficient technology.
That's because
if you're putting gas against electricity, price cost, kilowatt of gas versus a kilowatt of electricity. So there's not much incentive out there for the average homeowner to have one installed, is there?
The benefit is that if a heat pump system has been designed correctly and the correct radiators have been installed and the correct cylinder has been installed and the correct pipework leading to everything has been installed, then you can get it's called a SCOP, a seasonal coefficient, of 5, which would be for every 1 kilowatt of power going in, you get 5 kilowatts of heat coming out. On a combi boiler or any boiler, them normally badge 93 or 95% efficient. So this is 500% efficient against 93% efficient. So for every 1 kilowatt of power that goes into a boiler, you get 93% heat output. So you get less than what you put in, and on a heat pump, you get more than what you put in.
But it's cheaper to run on gas overall still.
That's why it's important. It's important that the SCOP is as high as possible. If you get a SCOP of 2, So you're getting 200% efficiencies, but the cost of electricity is 4 times more than gas. So then you're actually paying double as much to run your heat pump than you would your boiler. If you can get a SCOP of 4, then you're paying the same amount as gas. And then if you get 5, you're actually paying less than gas. But you also need to use it differently. So I think you'd be using this. I don't know if you'd be using the same amount of electricity as you would gas when you're putting in a heat pump.
I still don't believe there's an incentive there for consumers to buy it. Why should somebody spend a fortune on making their home, energy efficient, and then spend another fortune to have a heat pump installed when you can relatively cheaply have a combi-to-combi swap and you're sorted for the next, 10, 15 years worry-free? And the £5,000 government incentive is not great. There is no other really incentive. And also, where do you expect homeowners to get all this cash from to fork over?
Yeah, so I think again, government needs to be involved somehow to allow more cash to flow to people to get these technologies put in. That's number one. Number two, why would somebody put in? Well, look at the price of gas at the moment and how it's been fluctuating up and down. Imagine somebody did have solar panels and a battery and heat pump, then they would not be as affected by those price fluctuations. Putin in their own home, their prices would be lower because they're generating their own electricity. And even if they don't generate their own electricity with solar and batteries, and they just have a heat pump, if it's done correctly, they're using less energy than they would if they were to have gas. Also, gas comes out from some of it comes from inside the UK, some of it comes from outside the UK. But your electricity could be generated by wind power, could be generated by a wave, the wave power that they have.
I think tidal, it's called.
Yeah,
tidal. Well, speaking about producing energy and things like that, if everybody moves to heat pumps and electric cars and things like that, there's not enough investment going on in the national grid to be able to power all that.
Yes, I agree.
Again, government needs to do something in regards to that.
I agree. There needs to be a big infrastructure build. I don't know why the government aren't looking at this. When the Americans had to get out of the Great Depression, they did a huge build in the US. They built the Hoover Dam and they built loads of other things in the US. So why can't we do that in the UK? Why can't we get local people trained up and get them invested in training and building? And why can't we do a big build on power lines and whatnot, whatever we need to do? I do think that's something that needs to be thought of. But like I said, there's so much that needs to be done. It's not just installers. It's not just power lines that need to be done. Customers need to be given more money. Homeowners need to be given more money to do up their house. And there's so much else that needs to be done. But currently, I don't know how the government affords anything.
Let's fast forward sort of 20, 30 years. Say, electrical cars the normal, petrol and diesel's been banned. The end of gas, they're not using gas anymore in properties, everything is electrical. What does that mean for us, gas safe registered engineers? Are we the last sort of generation of gas safe engineers? Is the gas safe register going to go? Is it going to be like an obsolete job from then on? What will happen to all of us? Will we have to upskill to maybe, renewables like solar and heat pumps? Or, what does it mean for people like us?
I think over the next 10 to 20 years, as more people move off gas and as gas prices climb, it's going to be unaffordable for people to have gas boilers. So they're going to have to move on to other technologies, and they're not going to have a choice. I do think that. Can you repeat what you just said? I just didn't get that.
What will happen to sort of the last generation of gas engineers, us, in the next 20 or 30 years?
I think instead of us doing a gas course, instead of apprentices doing a gas course, they're going to be way more electricians. Maybe electricians who also are able to do plumbing. And then you've got a heat pump. I do think that you and I've just hit 40, you're slightly younger than me. I think you and I are really possibly the last of the gas engineers. Maybe we should create a company, The Last of Us or some such. Charity.
Yeah. Help for the poor gas engineers. Definitely. I wanted to ask you as well. I know you mentioned you saw a few new technologies in the installer show, such as the direct heat taps. I think there's a couple of companies that do that. Cooker with a QU and Quettle. Oh, I don't know how you say that, but it's
Yeah.
like Queettle. Is there something you could tell our viewers about that?
Yeah, so kettle spelled Quettle. There's no U. Kettle was the one that I saw installed. I didn't see Cooker there, and I really like their product. It's similar to Cooker, but Cooker have electronic LEDs and whatnot on there to let you know that you're using boiling water or that you're using refrigerated water. Kettle offered slightly different products, all mechanical. So if you were to get a problem with a kettle, you could get basic replacements similar to as if you were repairing a tap. It's that easy to do, as opposed to cooker where certain components are electrical, and so maybe you wouldn't feel so sure of replacing them. So it's much easier to repair, and I like that as well. And they also do boiling water. They also do refrigerated water. They also do filtered water. Kettle have so many other options. You could on kettle on cooker you could have the bubbly water. You could get that from your tap. So, and there are other things that you can do. I think, but the price difference is huge. I mean, I spoke to a supplier of mine just earlier today, and if I wanted to put in the cooker flex and also the water the water filter, and that would come to a price of around £1,000 plus VAT, so 1,200 thereabouts. If I wanted to go all in and get the cooker flex, the cube, which gives you the bubbly water, and also the scale reducer, that comes to nearly £2,000 plus VAT. So those are both cooker devices. The kettle device I put over here. If I were just to get a tap and a water filter, then I'd be looking at around oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong website. I'd be looking at around £867, including VAT, and that would include a 7-litre hot water unit, which would be enough for me and my family, and also the chilled water filter. So less than £1,000 for what they are charging me, just over £1,000 for. And kettle doesn't offer the funky features of cooker, so the £2,000 option from cooker doesn't exist within kettle. And another thing that kettle don't do is they don't have a pull-out spout, which a cooker does. So that might sway how a customer thinks about it, but there is a saving there of normally between £300 and £500 between the two different companies. So I would definitely be pushing the kettle to my customers. That's one thing I really liked that I saw at installer. And another thing I really liked was the new Intergas hybrid air source heat pump. So if you've installed any Intergas boilers, which I've installed many and you've installed a few, Intergas boilers, particularly combi boilers, over the past few years, since 2015, you can get a small outdoor unit and a small indoor unit, which you plumb together. And then you have a hybrid heat pump. And whenever the customer wants heating, the little heat pump kicks in and gives you some heat, and then the boiler kicks in to give you the rest. And hot water is all done off the combi boiler. So you still have gas, but you're still saving around 80%, they claim, of your gas bill because you've got this outdoor unit. Now, this does need F-gas. So F-gas is the use of refrigerants, which I can't do because you and I are both gas safe registered, which means we can work with gas for boilers. But F-gas is refrigerant gas, which I don't think either of us are registered for. So we would need somebody to do that little bit of extra pipe work. But Intergas have come up with this nice way of dealing with it. So there'd be a one-off cost for us, and also they would also help us engineers to become F-gas registered. So that would be really handy, I think, for the future when heat pumps have that option. So those were really cool two of the new technologies that I saw there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So much other things have happened in the week, like a couple of weeks ago, like I say, Greg Hands came out and said hydrogen is not a no-go at the moment. The UK government have announced certain things going on with heat pumps that I'd like to talk about next week. And also Labour have come out and they've had a whole policy release about what they want to do with renewables. And I would like to discuss that with you next week and see how it affects us gas engineers out down on the ground.
Yeah, in terms of business, taxation, general day-to-day regulation, things like that. These are all things that
What
we're going
things
to
might be
cover.
changing and how we deal with it and how it affects our clients and our customers.
Yes, all to be upcoming in the next couple of episodes.
Yes, indeed. Fantastic.
All right. Thank you very much to all of our listeners. And we'll see you
Yes,
next
thank you.
week.
See you next week. Thank you. Bye.